Maya had just left the walls of the clinic when her mobile phone suddenly rang. It was her younger sister, Stella. "Hey, how are you?" Stella's voice sounded joyous, emitting a wave of enthusiasm through the phone. "I've just finished my work," Maya replied wearily. "I'm about to leave there and head home to get at least a little rest." "You say the same thing every time," Stella chuckled over the phone. "Aren't you tired of living this dull routine?" To prevent sarcastic remarks, Maya cautiously remarked, "With Stella, it's always." She always knew how to keep her emotions in check. But lately, due to increased workload and unstable family circumstances, Maya felt like her nerves were on edge. "Aren't you tired of saying the same thing to me?" Maya sat behind the wheel of her car and started the engine. "Sorry, I haven't even parked yet. I'll just have a mini nap before going to sleep under the covers." "Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," now Hannah spoke in a softer tone. "I just have a request for you." "I knew it," Maya thought with irritation. Then she turned on the heating in the car. In mid-October, by 7 in the evening, it became terribly dark and cold outside, clearly not encouraging any activity except for getting cozy and relaxing. "Maya, it's about money again." Hannah grumbled discontentedly. "I haven't asked you for money several times already. Where do you get such thoughts? I wanted to ask you for a suitcase. Could you lend it to me for a week, maximum 10 days? And by the way, are you going somewhere?" The older sister inquired, more out of politeness than genuine curiosity. "Yes, I'm going to fly to the seaside," Hannah replied joyfully. "Unlike you, my plans aren't just about work and home." "You've always lived a dull and balanced life, Maya." Maya stayed silent. Indeed, she had always strived for a proper life, but perhaps to others, did it seem boring. Maybe for a 20-year-old girl, a life confined to home and work seemed dull and joyless. Perhaps she wasn't living the way she should. Stella, her sister, was always on the go, working, having a rich personal life, while Maya, right after finishing university, got married, managed it all. Maybe her life truly was dull and monotonous. "Hey, Maya," Hannah even rattled the phone. "Are you listening to me? The suitcase, help distract yourself from your gloomy thoughts. You do have a suitcase, right? It's just unbelievable." Hannah wouldn't let Maya get a word in. "Last time I traveled, my suitcase suffered from being overloaded and cracked. Since then, I haven't managed to buy a new one," Maya sighed to herself, feeling stuck. "You travel to resorts several times a year, and yet you can't buy a suitcase even between trips," Maya suddenly realized and reproached herself for being too harsh on her sister. After all, Hannah wasn't to blame for Maya's preference for work over leisure, and for not allowing herself regular trips to the seaside. When Hannah interrupted Maya again, "So, can I pick up the suitcase from you?" "Anytime," her sister happily replied. "Even tomorrow." "Got it, so today is definitely not good, right?" "Yes, better tomorrow after lunch. Saturday after I finish family consultations at the clinic, by 3 o'clock, you can come, it'll be great." "Thank you, sis," Hannah chuckled involuntarily, anticipating the upcoming trip. Autumn had arrived in the city and she was about to head to a warm country, enjoy the warm sea, and not freeze in the city until the heating was turned on. Maya returned home closer to 8 in the evening. Quietly slipping into the empty apartment, she groped for the switch in the hallway and finally turned on the light. Weary, she sank onto the bench near the entrance, stretched out her legs, and sighed heavily. On evenings like these, it was particularly lonely when Luke was delayed at work, and Maya had to return to an empty and gloomy apartment. She had often thought about getting herself a cat or a dog, but each time dissuaded herself, understanding that due to their constant busyness at work, it would be hard for the pet. From her coat pocket, she took out her phone and dialed Luke's number, not particularly hoping that her husband would answer immediately and even less that he would pick up at all. Of course, the phone just kept ringing endlessly and Luke never picked up. After preparing a quick dinner and taking a shower, Meyer anxiously stared at her mobile screen. Her husband didn't call, he didn't even send a message. Based on her experience, she understood that hoping for a call from her ever-busy husband was futile. Luke, the head of the gynecological department at the regional hospital, was engaged in work around the clock. He could be in urgent surgeries, mandatory conferences requiring his immediate presence, or during important meetings. Maya had long been accustomed to her husband always being occupied. She didn't complain or express any discontent about it. As Maya was drifting off to sleep in bed after a hot shower and dinner, she heard her phone ringing. "You called, I'm just leaving work," came through the receiver. Maya abruptly snapped out of drowsiness and glanced at the wall clock. It was already 11 in the evening. "Luke, I fell asleep, but I'm waiting for you. I don't need to reheat dinner, I've already eaten at work. We had a conference and everyone got hungry by this time. We decided to order pizza, so maybe you shouldn't worry about food," Maya suggested, feeling relieved. Upon her husband's arrival home, Maya began to feel a headache. After waiting for Luke, she immediately fell asleep without delving into the reason for the late conference. The next morning, upon waking up, she discovered that her husband was no longer at home. Despair and sadness overwhelmed Maya. She had breakfast alone, glanced out the window, and then began to prepare for work at the private clinic where she had been working for over 5 years. Maya worked as a therapist at the city clinic and also saw patients at private clinics. She derived immense satisfaction from her work, especially enjoying seeing the results of her efforts and hearing words of gratitude from her patients. Despite all the difficulties, Meyer always left work feeling content with herself and her productivity. As for her personal life, things proved to be much more complex. Maya's husband, Luke, was older than her and had been leading the gynecological department at the regional hospital for 15 years. His professional authority, extensive experience, and numerous grateful patients accompanied him throughout his career path. Next to Luke, Maya felt like a girl, considering the age difference, life experience, and the path of her spouse. Some of her acquaintances couldn't help but wonder, why did you marry someone significantly older? But Maya would just smile and reply, I love this person very much. Their acquaintance occurred when Maya was only 20 years old, and Luke had already turned 40. She was studying in her third year at the university while he was advising educators and occasionally lecturing on obstetrics and gynecology. Even then, Meyer admired his knowledge, listened attentively to his advice, and believed that fate had generously endowed her with the meeting and mutual attraction to such a smart, handsome, and caring man. Fate brought them together again in the library, where Luke was assisting a student in compiling a list of literature for study. Maya came for a book on ophthalmology, and when she approached the librarian for help, Luke remarked, "You're wasting your time in this library." "Why would it be a waste?" Meyer asked, looking at the man she often saw within the university walls. Luke didn't lecture specifically at their university, but his photo hung in the hall, and she knew who he was. "I suggest you get textbooks in technical literature, or even better, order online," he proposed. "That's an odd suggestion from you," Maya smiled. "Usually, you praise our library, and now you express a completely opposite opinion." "I simply always speak the truth," Luke replied, smiling and signaling to the librarian. "Don't you agree? Your library does lack some resources." Eventually, Maya took a couple of textbooks and, leaving the library, bumped into Luke again. "Will you take my advice?" he asked. "What advice exactly?" Maya wondered. "Go to the store or place an order online." "Well, I'll go to the store and choose. It will be quicker than waiting for an online order," Maya replied. "Then I'll drive you there," Luke offered. Maya was surprised. For the first time, she agreed to such an offer from this man with whom she hadn't previously interacted. It was the beginning of their communication, which initially was just casual conversations, not committing to anything. Their talks were more about student life and the educational process rather than medicine. Through many conversations with Luke, Maya learned that he had been married, and his ex-wife filed for divorce due to his constant busyness. She couldn't stand his absence in the evenings and was displeased with his interactions with other women, especially in his role as a gynecologist. This became the main reason for disagreements and conflicts, and Luke understood that he didn't want to limit himself in his interactions with women since it was part of his job, his professional duty, and ultimately, his life. These thoughts led him to realize that he needed a partner who would be understanding of his late returns, who wouldn't create scenes and dramas because of it. He considered Meyer as a candidate for such a role because he saw in her someone who, as it seemed to him, could support his professional activities without unnecessary problems and conflicts. When he addressed Maya, calling her Maya, this name sounded completely different to her. She felt that this word held a special significance, and began to see in this man something close and akin to her soul. Their relationship deepened, and Meyer often stayed overnight at Luke's. In his presence, she felt calm and confident, knowing that he would always support, help, and share life's simple truths with her. She was happy but didn't expect Luke to propose until the very last moment. When Maya returned home to her parents in a small provincial town located 250 kilometers from the regional center where she studied, she did not hide the truth about her relationship with a man who was almost twice her age. Her story provoked dissatisfaction and various reactions within the family. "Have you lost your mind, my girl?" exclaimed her mother, her eyes widening as she grasped her head. "You're only 23 and he's already 43. That's almost an entire generation's difference," expressed her feelings indignantly. Maya's father also didn't approve of his daughter's choice, but he approached Maya's feelings with understanding. "Lucy, why get so upset?" intervened the father. "There are many couples in the world where the husband is significantly older than his wife. It's better than if it were the other way around." And Maya could have fallen in love with someone older than her. "Luke isn't an old man," intervened the mother. "He's mature, wise, with vast experience. And what a doctor he is." "I'm glad Maya met such a talented physician," she said, but still expressed her concerns about the significant age difference. "But not 20 years, Nicholas. That's too much, Nicholas," she added, voicing her doubts. Nicholas just snorted without saying anything more. Over time, Maya boldly expressed her thoughts about her daughter's choice. That's when she finally realized that Luke was the man with whom she would truly be happy. Hannah, noticing how her older sister brought an adult fiancé into the house, decided not to stay silent. "I never understood why you get so upset by what sister says," noted the 17-year-old girl, staying alone with him. "It's not like you're marrying him, and why does it matter to you that he's older than me?" She smiled, trying to ease the situation. "Hannah, this is absurd. Don't call him that. Nicholas is only 20 years older than me. If someday you have to choose a fiancé, then take care of your own affairs, not mine. It's your choice, don't meddle," said Maya, shrugging. "Just imagine, sooner or later you'll regret your stubbornness about my fiancé," Hannah predicted. The words of the younger sister remained unjustified for almost 5 years, starting from the moment when Maya agreed to marry Luke in Kashfa. He proposed to her during her 5th year, and after that, Maya moved into his spacious 3-room apartment, graduated, and found a job at the clinic. She planned to continue her education in residency, but her parents visited her for the first time after the wedding. The parents, seeing how well their daughter's life had turned out, did not voice any protests. "First impressions can sometimes be deceptive," Lucy chuckled, surveying the spacious 3-room apartment in the city center. "Your Luke turns out to be quite decent. He not only paid for the wedding but also welcomed you into his life. He's a good man, dear, hold on to him," she advised. "I understand," smiled Maya. She felt love, happiness, and readiness to overcome any difficulties. Her profession as a doctor brought her satisfaction, and she believed she had found her true calling. However, Luke's constant persuasions regarding residency were troubling her. "You're enjoying your work as a therapist," he asserted. "You're excelling, the job brings you joy. Why spend time on further education?" Maya didn't argue with her husband. His opinion always mattered most to her. After several months of contemplating the future, she decided to continue working as a therapist in an ordinary clinic. Her friend sitting nearby shrugged when she explained her choice to forego further education. Once, one of her former classmates asked, "Don't you think your Luke is just afraid of competition? Become an expert and prove to him through your practice what you're capable of." To which Maya responded with a laugh, "Luke is too experienced and smart to be afraid of competition. Besides, he's a gynecologist, and I'm not considering that field of work." One of her friends expressed her opinion, "You, Maya, always justify him. You're used to him controlling you, making you dance to his tune. I'd be upset if my husband acted that way." "Luke is my husband, not yours," Maya tried to retort, but she felt uncomfortable. She began to ponder over her friend's words. And if there's a grain of truth in her words, if Luke is truly afraid that I might surpass him, Maya tried not to entertain such thoughts. She loved her husband too much to even consider it. 2 years after Maya and Luke registered their marriage, the idea of having a child came to Maya's mind. She was already 26, and her husband, Luke, was an outstanding gynecologist. "Luke," she began, trying to convey her thoughts in a way that sounded like a mutual decision, "do you want to have children?" Luke looked at her restrainedly. "Darling, you're only 26, it's still early to think about this." "But it's a perfectly normal age to start a family," Maya countered. "You yourself don't have children from your previous marriage yet. Maybe it's time to become a father." Maya's voice sounded hopeful and anticipatory. She could barely contain her emotions. As for Luke, he seemed not particularly interested in the role of a father. "It's still early, focus on your work," he remarked. But how can I progress in my career if I remain a simple district therapist? You initially discouraged me from further education, and now you're discouraging me from having a child. Maya spoke with a hint of hurt in her voice, feeling vulnerable under her husband's stern gaze. Maya, not now, said Luke, as if considering the topic closed. Not wanting to argue with her husband due to his authority, Maya decided not to bring up the subject anymore to avoid causing him displeasure. She made a promise to herself. Discomfort hearing it. She and Luke no longer discussed the possibility of parenthood. Maya didn't know how to respond to her mother. She was always accustomed to telling the truth to everyone: her husband, family, colleagues, patients. But when it came to such a complex and sensitive topic, Maya didn't know how to avoid acute pain. It's still early, I'm focused on work. Luke also has a lot of work, we just don't have time, she tried to explain. I'm not sure about that, Lucy objected, looking intently at her daughter. You'll soon cross the threshold of 30 and you still think it's too early. I gave birth to you when I was 23. Even then, it didn't seem too early for motherhood. After 30, it gets harder, more complications, less time. You're a doctor, you understand that. Maya felt awkward admitting to her mother that her husband didn't want children and believed it was still early for them to become parents. Time passed, and soon Luke would turn 50. It was a decent age for a man, especially for someone who didn't have children yet. Maya sincerely couldn't understand why her husband adamantly refused the idea of having children, showed no interest in her female health, and didn't strive to strengthen their family ties. Maya's return home was becoming increasingly difficult. No one expected her there, and she longed more and more for her husband, who was constantly consumed by work. She began to understand Luke's first wife, who complained about his perpetual busyness and filed for divorce. However, remembering Luke's words about his strong feelings for her and his dedication to work, she pushed away thoughts of possibly feeling hurt by her husband. After calming down a bit, she decided not to torment herself anymore. Consciously, Maya chose to be the wife of the department head at the regional hospital, realizing that it came with constant absence from home. When she was at the private clinic in Perm, she dialed her husband's number. "Are you still at the hospital?" she asked, anticipating the answer. "I'm already home, I've prepared dinner," replied Luke. But Maya's heart sank at the thought that her husband seemed to prefer being at work rather than at home. "You surprised me," she said, trying to hide her feelings. "Well, when you come home, you'll find out," joked Luke. "Maybe I have a surprise for you." Maya trembled at the thought of how wonderful her husband was. Even with their rare meetings, she always considered him the best man in the world. Upon arriving at the apartment, Maya heard Luke's voice and a woman's laughter. At first, she couldn't understand where the laughter was coming from, but soon recognized it. It was her younger sister, Hannah, who was supposed to pick up her suitcase. However, usually her sister would warn about her arrival or call, and now she came unexpectedly. "Hi, Hannah," Maya replied, attempting to conceal her irritation. "I'm sorry if I didn't call. There were just a lot of things going on." Hannah didn't move, maintaining her position in the kitchen. "Oh, come on, no need to apologize," she smiled. "You said after a certain time it'd be okay to drop by, so here I am. We didn't agree on a call or a message." Maya felt that her irritation was absurd and unjustified. After all, Hannah had acted according to their arrangement. Why was she reacting this way to her sister's visit? She questioned herself, trying to understand what was wrong with her. Although Hannah had previously caused annoyance with her words and actions, Maya had always been tolerant toward her. Hannah was the complete opposite of her older sister, fearless, confident, unyielding, and not open to objections. Sometimes, it seemed easier for Maya to agree than to argue with this stubborn and assertive girl. On the contrary, Hannah enjoyed engaging in debates, refuting and substantiating her point of view, even if it was entirely groundless. Luke had already prepared dinner for Maya's return from work: fish and salad. Maya looked at the set table and couldn't recall the last time her husband had cooked something similar. It happened only at the beginning of their relationship when she lived in his apartment awaiting marriage. After they got married, all household responsibilities fell entirely on Maya. "So, planning to relax, folks?" Hannah cheerfully asked, her voice tinged with irony. She often traveled with various men to different countries and enjoyed traveling abroad alone. Unlike her, Maya had never traveled abroad in her almost 30 years. We don't have time for leisure, the elder sister replied, trying to maintain composure in her voice. We're busy with work, whereas you seem like a free spirit. Exactly, Hannah grinned broadly. I know how to value freedom. But are you two planning to work until old age? Maya glanced at Luke sitting beside her, calmly eating his fish, seemingly oblivious to the conversation at the table. We're not discussing this with you, Maya stood up abruptly, addressing Hannah. Have you eaten? At that moment, Hannah's expression instantly changed. Her smile turned into a serious expression as the younger sister was taken aback by the unexpected coldness from her elder sister. Mash, what's happened? Hannah bit her lip, feeling the hostility directed at her. I didn't boast or judge your choice. If you enjoy working, then work. I didn't come here to evoke negativity from you, she said. Ally, come here, take the suitcase, get ready for a trip. I only have tomorrow off, and I'm very tired. I want to relax, even just for this day. Hannah was clearly hurt, briefly thanked Luke for lunch, took the suitcase, bid a farewell to Maya, and left the house. Maya, why did you do that? What happened? Did she do something to you? Asked Luke, who had been silent and neutral earlier. I'm just drained and tired, replied Maya. I wanted to spend this weekend with you. And then Hannah comes with her stories of carefree living. Luke smiled. Are you envious of her or something? Maya felt a shiver down her spine. Her husband, who had always displayed independence and indifference to others' feelings, suddenly asked a strange question that puzzled her. Really, could this be envy? Previously, Hannah had envied her older sister, having things that she didn't. She was more attractive and attracted more men than Maya. Maya had always been ahead, but by the age of 30, she had slowed her pace, and Hannah began to surpass her in the quality of life. There was no difference in their jobs, but Hannah was more adept at dealing with men, which brought her everything she needed and even more, while Maya found herself immersed in her dull, gray life, where there was only work and love for her husband.